One of the things, there's this sort of fetishization of the survivors and keeping them alive. Let's just be really blunt about dimensions and testimony. It's not a life extension or an immortality project. It's a video. It's just a video. It's not linear. So it's a different format, but we film people with the same cameras that you would film somebody with when you take a life history. The methodology is different, but the medium is the same. And all you're doing is accessing that much richer content-based database using curiosity rather than an editorial curatorial process. Now, of course, it is curated into the medium in which you present it. But I want to say that the survivors of the Holocaust were on our advisory board from the beginning, and they are still participants as advisors to the project today, those that are still alive. They are given agency in this process. All of them introduced their own interviews to their own community and to the museums in which they were working. And still today, those that are alive work with their own testimonies with young people. And so essentially by doing this, what we wanted to try and do is say, let's not make them the objects of our project. Let's make them the subjects of their own history and their own stories so that they can be in control of that narrative in whatever ways they want. Now, of course, there are limits. There are organizations and there are budgets and there are projects and there's methodology, and you have to define all this stuff and you have to grapple with the ethics of it. But within those limitations, of which there are many, what we try to do is make sure that they have the agency to be able to participate as fully as they would like in the creation of it, and therefore, in a sense, anchoring it in their experience throughout the project.
Thanks very much, and over to Paul as well.
Okay, well, Stephen, I'm really happy the way you summarized that, because of course the challenges are huge in the direction that you took, and it would be really interesting to look at empirical impact, right, of the approach. And I'm not sure a lot has been done on that yet. And I think that will be very valuable because, of course, we're bumping into things like uncanny valley effects. What's the impact if the dialogue manager is not really doing its job as planned and so on. But at the heart of the approach is, of course, in this case, the witness and the story that they have to tell. In our case, we took space as that anchoring point, right? To say, look, space gives us a sense of the credibility of the history, but also in that we face this problem of realism. Like, how realistic do you want to represent that space? How much do you want to add through your imagination? As in some sense, the first Anne Frank House Museum did. And to what extent do you want to communicate that uncertainty to your user? And so this is something that we really deal with very explicitly. How do we communicate our uncertainty about the historical information? And that's why in many cases, the buildings we present to our users, as you also saw in the Falstadt example, the bits that are not really known are left more abstract to clearly indicate this is a model of, this is our best understanding of. However, elements that are really known very well, that's where you can then deliver your realism as also a visual marker of our level of certainty. So I think it's not that we must be certain about everything. We won't. There will be multiple interpretations of many sources that we are looking at. But I think the real challenge is how do we communicate that uncertainty to our end users, and how do we make sure they also appreciate that message? So we see that also part, if you want, of the educational presentations that we're building.